Words of Sri Aurobindo from the book The Mother, with letters on the Mother by our Lord. Page 156, last stanza. Let nothing and nobody come between you, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Let nothing and nobody come between you and the mother's force. It is on your admitting and keeping that force and responding to the true inspiration, and not on any ideas the mind may form, that success will depend. Even ideas or plans which might otherwise be useful will fail if there is not behind them the true spirit and the true force and the influence. If you want to get back your faith and keep it, you must first quiet your mind and make it open and obedient to Mother's force. If you have an excited mind at the mercy of every influence and impulse, you will remain a field of conflicting and contrary forces and cannot progress. You will begin to listen to your own ignorance instead of the Mother's knowledge, and your faith will naturally disappear and you will get into wrong condition and a wrong attitude. Date March 1928. Topic: Help of Mother's Force for a Change. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, it is to be assumed that you are capable of the change since you are here in the presence and under the protection of the Divine Mother. The pressure and the help of the Mother's force is always there. Your rapidity of progress depends upon your keeping yourself open to it and rejecting calmly, quietly, steadily all the other suggestions and invasions of other forces. Especially the nervous excitement of the vital has to be rejected. A calm and quiet nature in the nervous being and the body is only the sound basis. It is there for you to receive if you open to it always. Date 27th August 1932. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, do not allow yourself to be troubled or discouraged by any difficulties, but quietly and simply open yourself to the Mother's force and allow it to change you. The Mother's force is not only above on the summit of the being, it is there with you, within you, near you, ready to act whenever your nature will allow it. It is so with everybody here. Date 15th November 1936. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the Mother's force may do everything, but one has to become more and more conscious of one's own being and nature and what is below in it. Let me repeat. Mother's force may do everything, but one has to become more and more conscious of one's own being and nature and what is below in it. It is not a question of mental judgment that is of a little use in these matters, but of consciousness, feeling, and seeing. Supermind is not organized in the lower planes as the others are. It is only a veiled influence. Otherwise, the supramental realization would be easy. Date 22nd May 1934. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, you should not rely on anything else alone, however helpful it may be seeming, but chiefly, primarily, fundamentally on the Mother's force. The sun and the light may be a help, and it will be if it is the true light and the true sun, but cannot take the place of the Mother's force. The steadiness you have gained is not a personal virtue, says our Lord. The steadiness that you gain is not a personal virtue, but depends on your keeping the contact with the Mother, for it is her force that is behind it and behind all the progress you can make. Learn to rely on that force, to open to it more completely, and seek the spiritual progress, even not for your own sake, but for the sake of the divine. Then you will go on more smoothly. They are unable to progress. Well, there are then two reasons. Because they yield to despair and gloom and illusion of impotence. Second, because they try only with their own strength and do not care or know how to call in the working of the Mother's force. Date 10th June 1936. Resistance to the Mother's force is the next topic. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the illness you have are the signs of resistance of your physical being or your physical consciousness to the action of the divine power. If you cannot advance in your sadhana, it is because you are divided and do not give yourself without reserve. You speak of surrendering everything to the Mother, but you have not done even the one thing which she asked of you and which you have promised more than once, if after having called the action of the divine force, you allow other influences to prevail, how can you expect to be free from obstruction and difficulties? Date 20th November 1928. The mother's use of pressure is the next topic. Sri Aurobindo says, I was speaking of your case only. It was not my intention to say that the mother never uses pressure. But pressure also can be of various kinds. There is a pressure of the force when it is entering the mind or vital or body, a pressure to go faster, a pressure to build or form, a pressure to break, and many more. But in your case, if there is any pressure, it is that of the help or support or removal of an attack or a disease, but it does not seem to me that that can be properly called a pressure. The mothers working in the preparatory consciousness, Sri Aurobindo says, the experience you have is a starting point of realization. They have to develop into the light of a deeper state in which there will be descent of a higher consciousness into you. Your present consciousness in which you feel these things is only a preparatory one in which the mother works in you through the cosmic power according to your state of consciousness and your karma. And in that working, both success and failure can come, but one has to remain equal minded to both while trying for success. A surer guidance can come even in this preparatory consciousness if you are entirely turned towards her alone in such a way that you can feel her direct guidance and follow it without any other influence or force intervening to act upon you. But that condition is not easy to get or keep. It needs a great one pointedness and constant single minded dedication. When the higher consciousness descends, then a closer union, a more intimate consciousness of the presence, and a illumined intuition will become possible. Date 17th November 1934. Receiving the mother's force at a distance. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, as to what your other friend asks, it is possible for him to receive where he is without coming here to Pondicherry if he has the adoration of the mother in his heart and an intense call for the blessing of the mother. I don't know whether mother is sending the force in the accepted sense. I haven't asked her, says Sri Aurobindo. In any case, anyone can receive the force who has faith and sincerity, whose psychic being has begun to awake, who opens himself whether he knows or not that he is receiving. But if X can imagine that he is receiving, that he can open the way to a real reception, if he feels it, why question his feeling? He is certainly trying hard to change, and that is the first necessity. If one tries to change, it can be done in more or less time. Sri Aurobindo says it is quite possible for you to do the sadhana at any place, at home, in the midst of your work, or many do so. What is necessary is to remember the mother as much as possible. Concentrate on her in the heart for a time every day if possible, thinking of her as a divine mother. Aspire her to feel her within you, offer her your works, and pray that from within and she guides and sustains there. There is a preliminary stage which often takes long, but if one goes through it with sincerity and steadfastness, the mentality becomes little by little to change to a new consciousness opens in the sadhak, which begins to be aware more and more of mother's presence within, of her working in the nature and in the life of some spiritual experience which opens the gate towards realization. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, remember the mother, and though physically far away from her, try to feel her within you and act according to what your inner being tells you would be her will. Then you will be the best able to feel her presence and carry the atmosphere around you, a zone of protection, a zone of quietude and light accompanying you everywhere. Date 12th December 1936. Receiving force from the mother's photographs, Question: when I sit in for meditation before the mother's photographs or the drawing of her feet, I receive a force. Is it a subjective feeling? For this, our Lord says, no, it is not subjective. By your meditating near them, you have been able to enter through them into communion with the mother, and her power and her presence is felt. These are the golden words of our Lord Shri Aurobindo.